I'm here because of my mom.
Me too.
Mama, please don't ask him a million questions.
Oh, come on now. Give me some credit.
Hey!
Does anyone call you Danny?
Not
Where
really.
are your parents from?
You don't have to answer. She's always been a little neurotic.
It's loaded with saturated fats. They clog your arteries.
Oh.
Bet nothing like this.
The neighbor threw a rock at me. What? Yeah. I was doing laundry. I heard a bang.
Aren't you scared that he's gonna murder you in his sleep and bury you in his yard?
Oh my God. Well, I wasn't until now.
She thinks our neighbor's stalking her, climbing on our roof. Every little noise she believes is an attack.
She's paying me to follow him.
How do I convince my mom that it's all in her head?
That's gonna be hard.
She's off the edge.
I'm not gonna sit back and do nothing.
Hi, my name is David Barber, and thank you for tuning in and checking out this video. Recently, I had the pleasure of supervising and mixing a beautiful film called Paper Spiders, written by Ynon and Natalie Champagnere, and also directed by Ynon. The film is about Melanie, a teenager played by Stefania Levy Owen, who is learning of and coming to grips with her single mother's mental health issues, played by Lily Taylor. The performances are wonderful, and the film still enjoys a 100% certified fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes, so I encourage you to check it out. Last year, in the two-part video Telling Stories with iZotope RX, we looked at using RX as a storytelling tool for the film The Killing of Two Lovers, and how we separated elements from production sound with the purpose of expanding the sonic narrative of the film. In this video, we'll explore a scene from the film Paper Spiders, and how what I like to call the delicate power of iZotope RX can turn this
Aren't you valedictorian?
Salutatorian.
Oh, not as good.
into this.
Aren't you valedictorian?
Salutatorian.
Oh, not as good.
We'll discuss some strategies and techniques on how to approach audio that at first listen seems unconfrontable.
Can you pretend to be normal?
Yeah. How can I be normal? What's the normal thing to say? Tell me something normal, I'll say it.
In a performance-driven film like Paper Spiders, the desire to record ADR is low. For those who aren't familiar with the term, ADR is defined as automated dialogue replacement, commonly known as looping. It's when the actors come back into the studio, sometimes long after production was wrapped, to re-record lines of dialogue that were technically unfixable or desired for creative reasons. ADR can certainly enhance a soundtrack and story in many ways, but the cut of the film we receive in audio post represents the takes that the director and editor have chosen. So in dialogue editing, it is our job to respect those choices and preserve the performance from production to the best of our ability.
Together, Melanie! What are you saying to me? What are you talking about? We saw you together!
The tools of today make respecting those choices and performances both easier and harder. Easier because the technology allows us to do things that were unimaginable years ago, and harder, oddly enough, for the exact same reasons. Let's dive into the track scene of Paper Spiders, where the call was made not to re-record the scene with ADR, and how iZotope RX enabled that decision. At the end, I'll show you how a couple other products in the post-production suite helped round out the scene, as well as having a little fun changing a performance with dialogue contour. First, I want to say a quick note about harnessing the full power of RX from your digital audio workstation. I hear a lot about people only using the RX modules as audio suite plugins. While it's great to have access to them in this fashion in your DAW, this a la carte approach really leaves the bulk of iZotope RX's power untapped. I'll show you how to set it up in Pro Tools. First, create an auxiliary track. On the track, insert the instrument RX monitor. Be sure to route the output to your speakers. If you're working in 5.1 or greater, I would recommend outputting RX to your center speaker, and if you're working in stereo, route it to the stereo output. I find that monitoring your audio cleanup the same way it will be routed in the end often affects the decisions you'll make. Next, open up RX Connect in the Audio Suite drop-down menu. RX Connect allows you to send audio from your timeline in Pro Tools to the RX standalone platform, and then return the processed audio to Pro Tools. Here's a quick demo of how to send an audio clip out and return it. Select your audio clip. Make sure that the repair button is blue in the RX Connect window. Hit send. This will launch iZotope RX standalone if it's not already open. work with the audio, click Send Back. Finally, hit Render to commit your changes in your timeline. You'll see that it says RX Connect on the audio file, indicating that all the changes you made in the RX standalone platform have been pressed to that audio file. There are options as to how RX inputs and outputs your audio as well. Here we've processed the entire selection and created a continuous audio file. Other options include processing clip by clip and creating individual files. Fades will be maintained in Pro Tools, or overriding the original audio file destructively. Let's take a listen to the track scene in Paper Spiders. Here's the clip from the final mix.
Buzzkill!
Hey! Aren't you valedictorian?
Salutatorian.
Oh, not as good. Hey, those pants do not do your body justice.
Excuse me?
Are those 9s? Those are the worst Nike knockoffs I've ever seen. Yo, you're not gonna make a time in those.
You're really bothering me.
I don't think I am. I think we're having a great conversation here. Hey, Mr. Franklin, what place did she get?
Daniel, back to class.
Is that vodka?
Why don't you say a little bit louder?
Is that vodka?
Back to class.
And here's the production sound received from the set.
Buzzkill!
Hey! Aren't you valedictorian?
Salutatorian.
Oh, not as good. Hey, those pants do not do your body justice.
Excuse me?
Are those 9s? Those are the worst Nike knockoffs I've ever seen. Yo, you're not gonna make a time in those.
You're really bothering me.
I don't think I am. I think we're having a great conversation here. Hey, Mr. Franklin, what place did she get?
Daniel, back to class.
Is that vodka?
Why don't you say a little bit louder?
Is that vodka?
Back to class.
One of my favorite things about iZotope RX is that there is no one correct way to approach any given problem. Today, I'm going to demonstrate the formula I came up with to handle this particular scene. If I were to get this scene again 6 months from now, I'd probably come up with a different formula, but that's just a testament to the versatility of iZotope RX. Step 1 when it comes to audio processing is always duplicate your audio so you can go back to the original if you find out that you've overcooked or overprocessed something. It may sound great to you today because you know how far you've brought it along, but in a week you may wonder what the heck you were thinking. Never start processing without having a copy to go back to. Now it's time to clean up the audio. The first thing I do is I try to come up with a methodology as to how to attack each clip or set of clips. This helps me create a recipe or series of processes that I'll use to denoise the audio while preserving the integrity of the dialogue to the greatest degree possible. First, I'll identify the anomalies that are obscuring whatever it is that I want to be hearing clearly, in this case, the dialogue. Next, I'll create a hierarchy of the anomalies based on their intensity. Finally, I'll think about the various modules in iZotope RX and come up with options to specifically attack each anomaly. This structure allows me to confront the audio issues in an orderly fashion and to use the right tool to target a specific problem, and also maximize the power of each module by not asking any one process to do too much. Let's work with Daniel's mic. And let's take a listen and identify the anomalies in this audio.
Salutatorian.
Oh, not as good.
Okay, I hear tones from the golf cart motor. I hear the mechanical rhythmic noises from the golf cart motor. There's the thumping of the microphones on the actors as they're running. There's water bottle crinkles. And Melanie's dialogue bleed. And then some general cloth rustling and ambient noises. Now, let's rank them in terms of what's obstructing what we're wanting to hear. For me, the most offensive item is the thumping of the lav on the actor, followed by the plastic water bottle crinkles. Next, let's remove the dialogue bleed, or at least try to minimize it. And then go after the tones from the golf cart motor, and the rhythmic mechanical noises, and finally the cloth rustling and ambient noise. Always keep in mind that our goal is not to completely strip the audio bare of all these anomalies, but only to remove or suppress them to the degree that they are no longer distracting us from the dialogue. The scene will eventually benefit from ambiances, Foley, group walla, and sound effects, so always keep that in mind in the early stages of cleanup. You can always do more, but unwinding a complex denoising process is much more difficult and time-consuming. So what processes come to mind when you're thinking about the thumping of the lav mics? These are the four that jumped out at me. EQ with a high-pass filter, deplosive, de-rustle, and de-wind. All of these modules would handle some aspect of the lav thumps. Ultimately, I went with a combo of de-wind outside his vocal frequencies and de-rustle over his speaking, as it preserved the low frequencies of his dialogue the best. After every processing step, it's important to review and assess what, if any, damage you have done to their voices, and whether or not the trade-off was worth it.
Salutatory.
Ooh, not as good.
Next, let's go after the plastic water bottle crinkles. D-click in multi-band mode with increased sensitivity and click widening is my go-to for these kinds of sounds. Here's before.
Salutatory.
Ooh,
And after.
Salutatory.
ooh, not as good.
Now we'll move on to the dialogue bleed from Melanie. Since we'll be getting Melanie's dialogue from her microphone, we can simply work to reduce it on this side using spectral repair and the harmonic selection tool. I'll use the lasso tool to select the root frequency of her voice, and the harmonic selection tool to get up to 10 harmonics above that root tone. And we'll use spectral repair to attenuate the signal. And now for some additional cleanup with spectral repair. And this is a great time to point out using instant process can really speed up your workflow. When you make a selection, as soon as you release your mouse, spectral repair performs the process automatically. Next, we're going to hit the rings and the tones of the motor, and again we're going to use spectral repair. We'll set the direction of interpolation to be vertical, and we'll skew the area to interpolate from to just above our selection, and we'll also narrow our bands a bit. And remember to use instant process to speed up your workflow. Let's see how far we've come.
Salutatory.
Ooh, not as good. Ooh, not as good.
At this point, I feel like we can approach a tool like Dialogue Isolate to see if we can't separate the dialogue from the remaining ambient sounds a little more. A quick note about Dialogue Isolate: it's actually one of the biggest upgrades in RX9. The new Dialogue Isolate machine learning technology uses a new neural network, taking its processing to another level. I mentioned earlier about wanting to maximize the strengths of each tool or module. Every process you perform allows the next tool to not have to work as hard or chew on as much data, and that increases its processing effectiveness. My goal with this recipe is to remove as much of the unnecessary data so that when I use a broad tool like Dialogue Isolate, it doesn't have to factor in the thumping and the crackling and the rustling while calculating what is dialogue and what isn't. This process allows it to perform better, yielding a better result.
Ooh, not as good.
For the remaining rhythmic element of the motor, let's use D-click again, and this time we'll increase the sensitivity, increase the click widening, and skew it towards the lower frequencies. You can also use instant process with the D-click module. And now let's use de-rustle to handle some of the heavier hits. and then we'll do a fast cleanup with spectral repair and see what we have.
Ooh, not as good.
And now we send it back and see what we have. Here's the before.
Salutatorian.
Ooh, not as good.
And here's after.
Ooh, not as good.
And now it's just rinse and repeat for the rest of the scene. Another tool you can employ to speed up your workflow in dealing with similar anomalies across several audio files is the module chain. In here, you can set up an order of modules and even toggle their settings and frequency bands to customize your processing. Hit process and the heavy lifting happens automatically. And now you can get straight to cleaning up with spectral repair and other modules. This scene starts out with 2 lines of ADR from Daniel. They were very well recorded in ADR and only needed a slight nudge to get them to blend in. While RX9 does have EQ match, which I like a lot, EQ match is static. So I went with dialogue match here to have the additional flexibility of EQ, reverb, and ambience all in one place.
Aren't you valedictorian? 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 Aren't you valedictorian?
I sampled the EQ from the clean dialogue from production, and then pressed that to the ADR files, and that was it. They sit nicely in the mix. Also, Neutron 3 is a great plugin to have on your dialogue bus. It can be the glue that holds your dialogue together with just the last touch of compression.
Hey, those pants do not do your body justice.
Excuse me?
And perhaps some dynamic EQ to soften some of the global harsh peaks.
Those are the worst Nike knockoffs I've ever seen. Yo, you're not gonna make it time in this.
You're really bothering me.
I don't think I am. I think we're having a great conversation here. Hey, Mr. Franklin, what place did she get?
Daniel, back to class.
Is that vodka?
Finally, I promised a little fun with dialogue contour. Inan was looking for a little performance change from the PE teacher at the end of the scene.
Back to class.
He wanted him to sound a little more irritated. I think the actor was a local hire and getting him in for ADR was logistically and financially not desirable. So using dialogue contour, I was able to actually change his performance and get what we needed. Let's take it into RX and manipulate his intonation. Here's the original audio.
Back to class.
To make him sound more irritated, we want to raise the pitch of the last word, or more specifically, the last part of the last word. Click on the line to create a node as an anchor, and then click to create another node to move. Now it's just a matter of degree.
Back to class. Back to class. Back to class. Back to class.
That sounds sufficiently irritated to me. Let's send it back and have a listen. Before.
Back to class.
And after.
Back to class.
Thank you again for checking out this video. I hope you enjoyed it and perhaps even discovered a few new ways that you can incorporate iZotope RX and the post-production suite into your workflows. Keep creating, and I hope to see you soon.